Speaking of Tony, one of the greatest lessons I learned from that man is to be an entrepreneur, 80% is your mindset. 80%, if not more, is how you think and what you feel and what you believe to be true. 20% is the mechanics. Inside my program, Digital Course Academy, I'll teach you webinars, list building, course creation, every technology you need. I'll teach you everything. But more importantly, I cannot I cannot move you forward if you don't get your mind right around what it means to be an entrepreneur. So if I was talking to myself 10 years ago, I'd say we need to strengthen your mindset around how to deal with failure. What happens when it doesn't work?
Welcome to the Mindset Hackers podcast, where we will help you level up both personally and professionally. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss an episode. Now, let's get going. Mindset Hackers, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today. We're going to give you a full dose of both entrepreneurship and mindset. I have a guest with me who is so special to me. She's literally changed the course of my life, as well as so many other people too. And she is a marketing legend who has worked for some of the biggest brands in the world before deciding to become her own boss and create a multi-million-dollar online business that can be run from anywhere in the world. She's also the host of the Online Marketing Made Easy podcast, which now has over 1 million downloads per month. She's helped hundreds of people turn their passion into profits and create 6- and 7-figure businesses. And I am one of those people. Amy Porterfield, I am so excited to have you here today. How are you doing?
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
This is going to be a blast because I have an audience who's going to love to hear all about your story. And you have this robust podcast, this amazing business where you help empower other entrepreneurs or people that hadn't even considered entrepreneurship. I've heard some amazing stories about people who are just like a school teacher, turning their ideas into an online business that can be run from everywhere. You've literally changed so many people's lives. And before we get going, and before I have you tell my audience about your backstory and how you got where you are, I wanted to share something with both of you and the people who are listening to my podcast.
Okay.
Back in 2019, I started getting really interested into coaching. I didn't ever plan on that, but I love the topic of personal development. I know that's something that you're very interested in too. And I worked for a very large sales organization. I started doing some mindset coaching inside of there, learning how to present, get in front of an audience, which scared me to death. And one of my leaders, she said, "Have you ever heard of Amy Porterfield before?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't." And she's like, "You have to listen to this podcast." And so she gave me her podcast. And in 2019, before COVID, I started listening to it and I was immersed in it. I love all your stories. I feel like I know you so well just from the way that you tell stories. And then during COVID, like my industry got rocked and I had to make a pivot, and I knew I needed to have a backup plan. So that's when I started learning about digital marketing and building courses. And it's been a journey. And this is the crazy thing that I want to share with you right now and with my audience. But in 2021, sometime last year, I was like, I haven't made a vision board for a long time. I'm going to put together a vision board. I did like a long time ago when I was younger, but it was the first time in a decade I made a vision board. Put a bunch of stuff that I wanted on there. And you're actually on my vision board. I wanted to do a podcast with you.
I can't believe
Isn't that
it.
cool?
Oh my gosh, I love stories like that. I think it's so cool when you're like, wait a second, I made that happen. That is very cool.
Well, thank you. So it's a very special moment. This is actually manifested. And I put that on there before I even started podcasting. I've only been doing this for, almost a year, but this is great. So thank you for taking the time. But let's talk about you. I want to hear a little bit more about your backstory because we know you as the successful entrepreneur, but most people don't see that iceberg, all the stuff that's below that built the person that you are. And I know that you worked for somebody who I listened to. I remember listening to his voice. He's almost like an uncle to me, but since the 90s, I was listening to his voice. He's really interested in personal development. And I found out that you worked for this person before you created your own business. Tell me a little bit more about your backstory.
Yes. So I always say I'm an ex-corporate girl turned entrepreneur very accidentally. I never, ever thought I would run my own business. I always thought I'd be a corporate girl. And I worked for Tony Robbins for almost 7 years as the director of content development. And what that means is I got to travel the world with Tony and his team and work on the content that he did on stage. So if you know Tony, you know Unleash the Power Within or Date with Destiny. And those are two of the events that I got to work on pretty extensively. And it was a wild ride. It was incredible. But one thing that Tony teaches is this idea of entrepreneurship. And it was always just a theme running throughout so much of what he did. And there was this one meeting Tony had where he brought a bunch of internet marketers to the San Diego office. Very humbling. I was asked to come to the meeting to take notes. And so I was sitting at a separate table, just taking notes. And he went around and these guys were talking about their internet marketing businesses and what they did. And all of them created courses. And all of them talked about freedom to be their own boss, work when they want, where they want, how they want, be creative in their own right. And I took the worst notes of my life that day because all I thought was, I don't know what these guys are doing. And they were all men. I don't know what these guys are doing, but I want a piece of this. And from that moment on, I thought, I'm going to figure out how to be my own boss because I want that freedom more than anything. And so fast forward about probably a year or a little bit more from that fateful meeting, and I went out on my own. And I thought I was going to create digital courses because that's what I was helping with in the Tony organization. And I love the idea of teaching and I was just ready for it. But I had no idea how to create courses. And so the first 2 years of my business, I did social media for small businesses. Sometimes I say I was a coach or consultant, but then I get really honest and think, no, I was a service provider. I was doing social media for these businesses and I hated it. And that's around the time that I decided I'm going to create my first course. Off camera, you and I were saying, you told me you're kind of the guy that just sends it. You just like go for it and do it. Well, that's what I did in this case, but it backfired because I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't have an audience and I taught something, which was social media for authors. I had never been an author. I was teaching authors how to use social media to launch their book. I had never been an author. I had no business teaching that, but there was a desperation in me that like I wanted to get out in the world and do something. So I just went for it. Here's the great part. I learned a lot from that first launch, everything what not to do so I could tell the story today, but dang, it was painful. I made a whopping $267 when I thought I'd make like $100,000 because why not? Everyone else seemed to be making that much money, which they weren't for the record, but you know, social media makes it look like everyone's rich. So I was devastated. That was literally my start into digital courses.
That's amazing. I know I've heard that somewhere, and I want my audience to hear that because that's part of the path of success. And I feel like there's so many lessons if we can just embrace getting through it and the doing. And I know that you teach this inside of your course. And by the way, Amy has the best course where she teaches other people how to build their own courses. And I know you talk a lot about the long game and getting through the first launch, and that's so important. And so the 297, how many clients did you get on that, or how many courses did you sell?
So I think I sold maybe 10 courses and the course was $297. However, I spent a lot of money I didn't need to spend. So when I took out the expenses, that's when I was like, oh my gosh, I made $267. I didn't even make as much as one unit of my course. It was such a disaster.
How did you get, what was going through your mind? Did you need to take a break after that? Or was it like, okay, I'm going to figure this out? Because I think that a lot of people, they get their first launch, or maybe they try to start in business. Maybe it's a different type of business, and they have something like that happen. They have higher expectations than what actually happens. And then most people get deflated and they think, well, this isn't cut out for me.
Oh yeah.
And then they bail. And that's the most vulnerable part of being an entrepreneur. Can you tell me more about, so you launched this 297 is what you come away with. What came after that?
So what came after that was a very dark time. I'm a sensitive girl and I took it hard. And I thought, I'm not cut out to be an entrepreneur. I'm a failure. I watch everyone else do it, but I can't do it. And I really thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to grovel back for my job. Like I will absolutely have to ask for my job back because my income actually made a difference in our family. It was my husband and I both needed to make money to to keep food on the table and to keep our lives going. And so I needed to make money, and this was a disaster. So for a good week or two, I moped around and I thought, this is not for me. And my husband, thank God, we all need one person in our life that's going to give it to us straight. And he's like, babe, you need to get dressed. You need to get in the shower. You need to get cleaned up. We are going to move on. We are not quitting. We're going to make this happen. And he kind of like pushed me back into the world. And I needed that, because then the next time I actually launched a course, it was a lot better. Still wasn't $100,000. It was a couple $1,000s, but I'm a baby steps kind of girl. Just let me in. Let me just do the thing. And each time I'm going to learn a little bit more in order for it to finally click. So I went through a dark time, but then I got back at it and it finally did click. And when it did, I have never, ever looked back.
That's amazing. So if you had somebody in your organization and you saw that somebody wanted to do the exact same thing that you did, somebody maybe 10 years behind where you are now, and you were going to give them some advice before they even started on this path, like what would you tell that person, or tell yourself, I guess?
Such a great question. Speaking of Tony, one of the greatest lessons I learned from that man is to be an entrepreneur, 80% is your mindset. 80%, if not more, is how you think and what you feel and what you believe to be true. 20% is the mechanics. Inside my program, Digital Course Academy, I'll teach you webinars, list building, course creation, every technology you need. I'll teach you everything. But more importantly, I cannot move you forward if you don't get your mind right around what it means to be an entrepreneur. So if I was talking to myself 10 years ago, I'd say we need to strengthen your mindset around how to deal with failure. What happens when it doesn't work? And recently I learned the biggest lesson. I'm 13 years in, but recently I learned the difference between the gap and the gain. Have you read that book by chance, The Gap and the
No,
Gain?
I would love to hear a little bit more about it, because I've heard that come up, and they say when the universe puts something in front of you like 2 or 3 times, then you better listen. So this is probably the third time I've heard about the
Okay.
gap and the gain. Tell me
So
more.
good. So Dan Sullivan and Dr. Ben Hardy, and they wrote this book together. And it's this concept that people measure either two ways. Either you have a goal and you measure how close you got to that goal. And let's say you wanted to make $100,000 and you made 50. Well, then you're focused on, I came up $50,000 short. Shoot, what am I going to do? Am I cut out for this? You're in the gap. But what they suggest is that you actually focus on the gain. You started with zero and you made $50,000. Look how much you've gained. If you focus on what you've done, and they say you measure backwards, go backwards. Where were you before you started? Where are you now? When you live in the gain, everything is different. And if I could go back to myself 10 years ago, I'd say find a way to live in the gain. Always measure backwards. See how far you've come in a day, a week, a month, a year. You will blow your mind. But if you're only measuring, did I make $100,000 in this launch? Do I have 200,000 people on my email list? If the answer is no, and you always come up short, you will literally lead in your business from a place of I'm coming up short versus look how far I've come. And that right there makes all the difference. I didn't have that 10 years ago, but geez, I wish I did.
That's such great advice, because I think one of the blind spots, and I want to ask you about some of the blind spots that you see that hold people back, but it's the comparison game. People will see somebody, they'll fixate on the person who's absolutely crushing it, the person who's already ran 3 other businesses, and be like, why am I not there yet after 3 months? But the way you're describing the gap and the gain, like the gain is like perspective of like how far you've come, and
Yes.
sitting and marinating in that a little bit more instead of like focusing on what's lacking, which creates separation. And that creates scarcity mindset. So thank you so much for sharing that. Speaking of blind spots, I'm sure that you see this quite often, that you probably have some very talented people that you've worked with, but their mindset, you said mindset, it's 80% mindset. I hear that from so many people, but give me some examples of what are the most common mindset traps that people come across? Like what holds them back the most? And do you have any examples of times where you've seen somebody that has so much potential, but they let their mindset get in front of them and they got
Uh,
in their own way?
Absolutely. I think for a lot of my students, what I see students that come through my program and they create their course and they launch their course, whether they make $1,000 or $100,000, they're off to the races and they're never looking back. And then I see students who get into my course, they get started, they're going, and they lose steam. And usually that is because they're looking all around. What is she doing? What is he doing? Look how far Amy's come. What they compare themselves to everyone, and you will never ever measure up when you are watching social media. We are only sharing the front end of our business. We are only sharing that highlight reel. It is not all true. And I've made a big effort in my own social media because I know people follow me and they're looking for direction to share the $267 launches, to share the fact that I deal with depression and anxiety and what I do about that, to share the fact that sometimes I don't feel like doing the work. Like, I've got to be honest, because I'm so afraid that my students see only these highlight reels and it stops them in their tracks because they never measure up, because it's not real life. That's one of the blind spots that I see keeps people from moving forward. Another one is that they make a lot of excuses why they're not ready. My email list isn't big enough. Well, I could tell you 5 stories right now of people that had, actually, I'm going to tell you one. One of my students, his name is Rob Green. He's a photographer, has a very successful photography business, but that means he's in person taking photos. During COVID, not the best business to be in. So what he decided to do was create what I call a spotlight course. He took one area of his expertise and he shone a spotlight on that area, which was flash photography. So he created a flash photography course. He had 100 people on his email list and made $12,000. And he was able to do that because he nurtured those 100 people and he gave them what they wanted. So that's another thing. My list isn't big enough. I don't have my website up yet. I need to start a podcast. All of these excuses why you shouldn't get started. And I think you and I, based on the experience we've had in the world with our businesses, know that until you get something out there, you'll never be able to make it better. You'll never be able to dial it in. And so Seth Godin's idea of shipping it is so valuable with the digital course, because I've had many digital courses in my career, but what I do is I create one course and I launch it, and then I get feedback and I make it better. Then I launch it again, and now I'm making even more money with my second launch because I took the feedback and made it better. Then I'm launching again. And so one asset that you can launch over and over and over again is how you scale a business. So you got to get started at one point or another. Do it before you think you're ready. We are never essentially totally ready for anything in our business.
Oh, I just got goosebumps because of that. You know what? This is so crazy because when I took your September 2020 DCA course, and I went into that in September not having a clue of what my course would be about. And this is such a great lesson for the audience, is you're talking about that, about taking action and doing it before you're ready. And I didn't have an idea for a topic going into it, but I noticed that a lot of people were asking me about LinkedIn because I started getting a lot more traction on that. My organic growth was really growing, and people would ask me questions. And that was one of the things that you had talked about in your course, was just be very tuned into what people are asking you about, and you can create an offer around it. And so I actually launched a beta version of my course before I even finished yours. And this is developed, like, I didn't want to do it again after that. But I got like 14 people in the first time.
Nice.
And just like to be able to launch something just by taking action, it was messy, but like I did it, and I did it within the boundaries of your course, which I feel like a great story about taking action. But then, I didn't want to do it again. I had this resistance against doing it, but I knew I would get better because you preach that all the time. You talk about getting better and the long game. And I did. And the third time, you always talk about the third time is where it like really clicks. And I joined your momentum group. And wow, this third one I did last October after like several months of just like putting it off. And I knew that I needed to lean into that resistance. And this has become a really big course, and it's an evergreen course now. We're bringing people in, we're building high ticket offers off of it, but this all came because of you and your encouragement to do this, to pick one thing and do it over again.
This makes me so happy, because when you said you launched it first and you had 14 people and you didn't want to do it again, I was going to say like, so why didn't you do it again? But you did. I love to hear that. And what I have to ask you, not that I'm the interviewer, but I can't help myself. So when you did it the first time, you made 14 sales and you didn't really want to do it again. How did you get yourself to do it again?
I just feel like the things that you don't want to do are the things that you need to do the
I
most. And
totally agree with that.
I took the 14 cells and I rolled that in and bought Kajabi because that's a platform that you've talked a lot
So
about. And I
smart.
love Kajabi now. And so that's kind of nice because you can actually create funds to fund your business through launching something. But I remember when I opened, like I didn't do like a webinar or anything, but I opened up a launch window and just started DMing people asking if they'd be interested in me helping them with LinkedIn. And I didn't make any sales on the 2 days in. And I remember I went through this huge self-doubt. Like I even wrote this down in my journal, like, I hate doing this. Why am I doing this? I should just
Aw.
go back into sales. But I knew it was going to pass. And then the sales started coming in, and then it's become a very successful launch. So I love telling that story. But yeah, I don't want to focus too much on me. I want to focus on you because you've got so much knowledge. And here's a topic I want to ask you about,
Okay.
because I've heard you talk about this on your podcast. I think it's so relevant right now. I'm seeing a lot of marketers pull this gig out where they get coaches in. Like coaching can be very seductive. To make money helping people out is a very attractive niche to be in. But what
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of is like, hey, we can help you scale your business to 30K months in 90 days without lifting a finger. And I kind of track that down to something Alex Hormozy said about, he has some kind of equation, and that's great if it works, but I see a lot of people failing because that, and I hear you talking on your podcast a lot about playing the long game. And I see people get damaged because they expect that they're going to be making 30K months in 90 days, and then they don't, and they have that comparison thing and they feel like failures and they think that's not for them. You have decades of experience in marketing and digital marketing. Tell me more about like the long game. And is that false, or I see, because I get invites all the time, like maybe 3 times a week, from marketers that have that same pitch line, and they don't have any social proof, they don't have any testimonials. But tell me more about that. Like, is there there's some ickiness that I'm feeling around it, but
Yeah.
way more about than this. Can you shed some light on that?
I see it a lot as well. I also see a lot of create your course in 30 days and get it, make $100,000 or whatever. And what I don't love about that, although some of it might work, I've never taken it, but what I don't love about that is that when you're creating an asset in your business that is going to consistently make you money over and over again, I want you to give yourself the time and space to make it great. Not perfect, just make it great. And a lot of us, we can't get something up and running in 30 days that quickly. We have lives, we have busy lives, we have businesses to run, we have things to do. And so I feel like it's unrealistic for most people. But to get to your point, playing the long game, it's everything to me. So when I left my corporate job and had my first failed launch, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go back to my job. One of the things my husband Hobie said to me is, let's not talk about ever going back. Let's take it off the table. Let's just say that you're an entrepreneur now. This is happening. That's your identity. And it was the biggest gift he could give me because, totally off topic, but the same thing. In my first year of marriage with Hobie, we were in debt, and it was a very hard first year of marriage. And I, being so naive and young, we'd get in a fight and I'd be like, what? So you want to get a divorce? And I would just throw out the D word like it was nothing. And there was a time he's like, you need to stop doing that because that's not an option for us. And there's no reason to talk about it. Well, it was the kind of the same thing with, we're not talking about going back to our old life. So when you put a stake in the ground and you say, no matter what, I'm here for the long game, I am going to make this work, you allow yourself an easier runway to figure things out, to crash and fail, to make all the mistakes, but you're not going anywhere. And I really do think that was the secret to my success in so many of my students. Well, let's get up and figure this out. It doesn't mean I don't cry or I don't have really bad days or I get into a funk because of it, but I get myself out of it because this is what I do. I am now an entrepreneur. So owning that identity allows you to not chase those shiny objects of make $30,000 in the next 30 days or whatever. Some people make it happen, but I don't think it's a long-term realistic business model.
Oh, thank you for shedding light on that. This is amazing. What you just told me, I have this affirmation that I love to say with my team. There is no other option. We've chosen this path. There
Oh,
is no
say it
other option in
again. There,
existence.
There is no other option. We've chosen this path. This path. That's exactly what I'm talking about. When there's no other option, you freaking figure it out.
Oh, I love that. Okay, I'm going to ask you one more mindset question, then I want to dive into you and the offers that you have and what's coming down the pipeline for you so that you can help serve some of the entrepreneurs in my audience. Mindset. What is your mindset? You talked about mindset being 80%. Like, what is your mental workout routine? What are some of the techniques or the habits or the practices that you like to use to keep your mind sharp and away from quitting, and to know that there is no other option for you than to impact millions of people?
I love this question. So, number one, I have this saying, I've already won. And I've done this for years now,
Mm.
where if something's not working out, if I'm scared that something's going to crash and burn or whatever, I say to myself, but I've already won. And what I mean by that, and this is so funny because this is totally in line with the book I just read, but I did this way before I read the book, which is I look at my track record, whether it be in corporate or in my marriage or as a stepmom or whatever, and I look at all the things I've been able to accomplish. So I've already won. I've already had a good life and I've had some wins. So I remind myself of that as I move forward because I'm not starting from zero. And I think that's so important to remember. Also, I say it because I know I'm not giving up. I've already won because I already declared I'm in this for the long haul. I've already won because I'm never going to give up. That's kind of where it came from initially. But the other thing, an actual practice I learned in the Gap in the Gain, and I've been doing it ever since. Every single night before I go to bed, I write down 3 wins from the day. Just really quick. It's kind of like a gratitude practice, but there are 3 things that I did well today. And then I write down the 3 things that I want to do well tomorrow, 3 wins that I want to have. Now, I don't always hit those wins, but I set up my day in a place that I'm already set up to win tomorrow. I've already declared how I'm going to win tomorrow. And then the next day, I don't go back and look at those wins. I just keep moving forward. I do it again. 3 wins today, 3 wins for tomorrow. And this practice gets me in the right mindset. Again, so much of what I do is teach all day long about courses and lists and webinars. But at the end of the day, if our minds aren't in the right place, none of that matters. So this practice of winning and successes and documenting them helps me immensely.
How worth it is it, all the stuff that you've done over the years to be where you are? Is it worth it?
Oh, it's so worth it. I always say that the worst day as an entrepreneur, like one of my darkest days, I got out of a partnership many, many years ago, and it was a scary time. I thought I was going to lose my business. And I'd say one of those days would be the worst days of being an entrepreneur is still better than the best day in my 9-to-5 job.
Oh,
And
that's
that's how
beautiful.
much I love being an entrepreneur and I love the freedom I have to do what I want to do. So yeah, no regrets.
And then just the impact that you make must feel so good.
So
Okay, so let's
fantastic.
talk about your offers. Okay, I want to hear a little bit more. I know that you have Digital Course Academy, List Builder Society, and you wrote something out recently called, or it's about scaling your business, which is
Mhm.
awesome for those of who've made it to a certain level and then you want to start growing your business. But tell me more about those and let me know if I missed anything.
Yeah, so I always try to look at the customer journey. And for those who come into my world who don't yet have an audience, don't yet have an email list, I always say the energy of your business is directly tied to the strength of your email list. I'm going to repeat it one more time. The energy of your business is directly tied to the strength of your email list. And when I say energy, I'm talking revenue, engagement, impact, all that cool stuff that happens in your business, direct reflection of the email list that you build. Social media can come and go. That algorithm is shaky, but your email list is here to stay and you control it. So I have a program called List Builder Society, helping people start from scratch and grow that email list. From there, though, a lot of coaches, especially, I have lots of coaches and consultants in my world, coaches from all different walks of life, all different topics, and they get burned out with coaching one-on-one. They like it. A lot of them like it, but they don't want to just do that. Plus, they hit a ceiling of how much money you can make. You're only one person. And so a lot of the coaches in my world, they want to go to the next step, which is Digital Course Academy. And this is the program I only offer once a year. So Digital Course Academy is literally how to create and launch a digital course from scratch. You've never done it before. You might not even have an email list yet. You're just getting started, and I'll help you get that course up and running and launch to make money over and over again. So that's Digital Course Academy, which also has a list building component tied into it. And then I have a membership called Momentum. And the only way you get into Momentum is if you come through Digital Course Academy first. So it's very exclusive and special, and it's where I really get to know my students at a deep level. So I've got List Builder Society, Digital Course Academy, and Momentum. And then you mentioned the systems course. I do have another course on Evergreen called Systems That Scale. And it's for people that have probably been at it for a while and are looking to streamline their business.
It's beautiful. And I can fully endorse 3 of those 4, the List Builder Society
Oh, cool.
and Digital Course Academy. Like I said, that changed my life. I am on my 2nd year of Momentum, my 2nd full year of Momentum.
I'm so honored to have you in my community. It means the world to me.
Yeah, I need to be a little bit more vocal and do some. I'd love to add some more value, especially if any of your students need some more LinkedIn tidbits. That's kind of my jam.
Absolutely. I love it.
But okay, list building. This is something that you talked about I didn't understand the weight of this, and your team sent me over a couple of freebies that we can leave with this audience. We can put them in the show notes
Cool.
about list building, but I didn't quite understand that until now, and it's a big focus of mine. But I remember you talking about building a list early on, and I was like, yeah, I'll get around to that. And it was trickling on. Now I've got such a focus on that. But why is that so important? You said engagement, you said revenue. Can you tell me more about, like, if you were talking to Simon from 2 years ago that didn't quite get it, how do you smack me in the face and tell me to like get going on the list?
Well, one of the things I always tell this story that my dad was a firefighter. He's retired now, and he doesn't understand the online world at all. And when I quit my job with Tony Robbins and started my own thing, that really freaked out my dad. Like his baby girl was going off doing something crazy. And so he would call me all the time and say, "Are you okay?" And I'd say, "Okay, Dad, here's the thing. I'm growing my email list. As long as I continue to grow my email list, I will always have a way to make money." And so he understood that if you have a list, you can make money. So now when he calls, he'll say, "Do you continue to grow your email list?" Like that's the only thing he really gets. And if I say yes, he's all good with my choice of being an entrepreneur. So the reason why growing an email list is so incredibly important is because if you post on social media, some people are paying attention, some people aren't. And that algorithm, you do not own it. And you're building your business on rented land when you only do things on social media. Because Mark Zuckerberg could decide to change that algorithm tomorrow, and boom, the way you do business is gone. Do you remember the day that Facebook and Instagram both went out at the same time?
Yes, your momentum was blowing up. When that
Yes, we're like, is anyone out there? Like, is the world still happening? And so that day, that morning, I happened to send an email to my audience, telling them and reminding them I've got List Builder Society, which I've had that program for years. But I was just reminding them, hey, if you haven't joined yet, here's an opportunity. So that day, I made $7,000 with one email when Facebook and Instagram were totally down with one email. And we went on to make money when people opened the email days later. And so I always say that you control your email. It is yours. You get to do what you want to do. If you have an email list of 500 people and you've got to make some money fast, you could put together a simple offer and email your list, and you can make money today. That is not guaranteed on social media. So if you want confidence in your business, if you want to know you're controlling what's happening in your business, you've got to have an email list, and not a huge one. Like I said, remember Rob Greene had 100 people on his email list. A few hundred people goes a long way.
That's powerful. I'm so glad that you shared that. And I wanted to share a quick story from Momentum, but there was a story of somebody who had like a $150,000 course launch. And I was reading the debrief on it, and she spent a year solely building her list. So I think that's something that we can share too, is that you don't have to have your idea yet. You don't have to have your business set up. But if you can start to cultivate an audience, just like you do on social media, people who want to get to know you, because people buy from other people, and you start building your list, you could literally be seeding a business that you have not even created.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's why you don't want to wait on putting out great content and offering some kind of freebie for people to get on your email list. Even if you don't know what you're going to sell yet, let's get started on that. And in Digital Course Academy, we created something called Start from Scratch. And that's exactly what we encourage people to do while you're creating your course, while you're figuring it all out. Grow your email list as well.
Brilliant strategy. Well, thank you so much for joining me here today. I've got a couple calls to action for the audience. The first thing I want you to do, Mindset Hackers, is pick up your phone right now and go on to whatever app you're listening to, whether that's Spotify or iTunes, Apple Music, and type in online marketing made easy and subscribe to Amy's podcast. You will love it. She's got such a great mix of entrepreneurship and mindset, which was why this was such a great episode. And I'm so grateful for. But also, we're going to leave you a couple nuggets from Amy Porterfield's team to help you get started on building your list. And I want you to at least download these and take a look and see what's possible. Start asking yourself the question of what is possible for me, just like Amy did so many years ago, that has created such an incredible business. And then the other thing too is please share this with somebody. Like if you are a budding entrepreneur, if you know somebody who has been giving it some thought, do them the favor of sharing this episode, because that is exactly what happened to me in 2019. Someone was kind enough to share Amy's podcast with me, and that has changed the course of my life. It has literally helped me build a six-figure business that I could bolt onto my wonderful sales job and run with about 4 to 6 hours per month. It is incredible. You have changed my life, Amy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so very much for having me. I love your story, and this has been a lot of fun.